May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Gook Audio podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Gook Audio and Gook Archives, preserving the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths crossed his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So I'm going to read a piece from the Tassajara Stories collection. Tassajara Stories, the early years with Shunryu Suzuki, a work in progress. So this one we'll get to right after we've had our pause to meditate. So when you hear the bell, hit pause, if you're of such a mind, and meditate or whatever for as long as you want, if you wish. And when you're through, hit unpause. And then we'll be here to hit the bell to end the meditation or whatever, and we'll get right into the next Tassajara Stories. Chainsaws. We had to cut a lot of wood at Tassajara. I would be using a chainsaw or carrying one, and some guest or student would stop to watch and, when it was shut, tell me their favorite chainsaw horror story. When I was director, we tried out shipping out a cord or more of firewood to deliver to see if it was worth the time and effort. That worked especially well with a couple of guests who wanted unsplit wood so they could split it at home, but that experimental business did not last long. It started with a bit of pressure. We've got to start that firewood business right away. We must generate more income. It ended with, "You've let this get out of hand. It's become frenzied and taking people away from the practice." Well, that's good. What a relief. I was in a chainsaw store in Monterey looking at one of the small models when the salesman came up and said to me, "I know of 2 men who have cut their heads off with that very model." What an excellent salesman. I considered his unusual selling point on the power of that little fellow and reviewed the cautionary stories I'd heard and some of my own chainsaw history. I'd gotten pretty good at sharpening chainsaws, and I knew how to keep them well oiled and running smoothly. I knew to keep my legs spread apart with an axe and to stand somewhat to the side when using the chainsaw so that if it bucks back, it won't go flying into your face. I knew it was wrong to use the tip to start a cut and not to cut with it over my head. But there would be times when I'd go, "Oh, well, what the heck," like after an alder had fallen across the creek from higher on the bank. I'd learned that it's important to take frequent breaks, at least for me, because I'd get hypnotized by the sound, smell, and vibration. One time I was holding a running Husqvarna, ready to plunge it once more into a fallen tree trunk, when a butterfly got quite near the blade, I started to wipe the butterfly away with my hand when I suddenly realized what I was about to do would cut all my fingers off, except for the thumb, which is the one you'd want to keep if you could only keep one. I shut it down and sat there in shocked dread of the possible. The next day at Tassajara, I put the chainsaws up and got the hefty timber saw out, the one with the handle on each end, and the one with the handle on one end. They'd come with the place, and we'd use them. I used them and liked to sharpen them. They might have been there for over 100 years, for all we knew. We also had some bow or Swedish saws of various sizes, and of course there was always need for axes and hatchets. And now that we didn't have a firewood business anymore, there wasn't as much to cut, so there was no need to discuss this change to not using chainsaws. And I quickly found out there were no complaints. It was so wonderful getting into a cutting rhythm, especially with the two-person saw. The difference in the noise was as that between a machine gun and a bow and arrow. The only odor was that of wood, and a lot of oak has a beautiful, sweet smell. How appropriate for Tassajara. It was like we'd gone from Monster Mash to riding on a swing. So I think I'll leave that for today's Tassajara story. I got a lot of other stuff I'm doing, and I'll get through them all. And so this has been a Cuke Audio mini podcast of Tassajara Stories. I'm D.C. Popov, Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sonora with Dogette Bandita, feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.